Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. The informal meeting of the European Environment Ministers has just come to a close, and I will ask the Presidency, Minister of Environment, Mr. Valentinas Mazuronis, and later on we'll give the floor to Madam Connie Hedegaard, the Commissioner responsible for environmental issues. Minister Mazuronis, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for your interest, for having found time to come to this press conference. Indeed, today we had a very constructive and intensive half-day of work. You may know that this informal meeting is a step towards a formal meeting, and the COP19 meeting in November in Warsaw, where as member states of the EU, we should speak with one voice on the prospects of new climate change agreement in the negotiations with other parties. And I have to say I'm pleased with the discussion today that we had among the member states. Very important was also the participation of China's chief negotiator in the second part of our session. He presented China's position in a very comprehensive speech with regard to the forthcoming Warsaw meeting, Warsaw conference. He also informed us about the achievements of China in climate mitigation work, and assured us that China is ready for active cooperation with the EU in dealing with climate change issues. I think this is very important, and it was a very significant step which we have witnessed here in Vilnius in bringing together the EU and China. Therefore, I would think that today's meeting was very positive. The results are good, and I think that I will be able to say the same about our next step. I would now like to give the floor to Commissioner Hedegaard.
Thank you very much, and can I first thank Minister Mazuronis and the Lithuanian government for a very, very good informal meeting. I think that everybody is very happy both with the hospitality but also with the content of this meeting. And as the minister just stressed, needless to say, one of the highlights, I think, to many of the ministers was that we had this visit from the Chinese minister, our counterpart in the international negotiations. And there were many things mentioned there, but I think that what might be of most interest to many Europeans, that is how the minister from China described what they are actually trying to do right now, preparing their own climate law, starting their own emissions trading scheme with the help of the European Union. We are in the Commission financing this and helping them how to do it. Preparing also a low-carbon roadmap for 2050. And I noticed, and I'm sure the minister also did, that Minister Xie said that the low-carbon development will give China a new competitive edge. In other words, he said very clearly that to go low-carbon, that spells opportunity. That is the way we must have the growth of the 21st century. I think that was a very important message. And needless to say, we also discussed the international negotiations, also on our own without the Chinese presence. We had a debate about the international negotiations. And I only want to sort of say one thing about Europe's role in this up to 2015, the Paris International Climate Conference. there is this discussion. Should a new international framework be done bottom-up or top-down? Bottom-up meaning concrete action from all the countries. Top-down meaning we define who is going to do how much. I think that what we believe in the European Union is it cannot be either or. It has to be both and. Both bottom-up, where all of us do what we can do and must do and take our fair share. But then when we know that, and when we know what our competitors also intend to do, then the whole purpose of an international framework must be that each of us then dare to go one step further and stretch a little bit more, because we know our competitors are also committing to do their utmost. So Europe's role in the next 2.5 years will be to insist that it's not enough just to say, oh, we all do what we would do, but to inject ambition into an international agreement so that we can actually close the gap, close the ambition gap, and not widening the ambition gap. And that is what our discussion this morning has been circling around.
If I may, let me add also that we had a lot of bilateral meetings involving ministers from a number of member states. Before this session today, for example, I had a meeting with the climate change minister from the UK. After this press conference, I will be talking with the minister from Italy. So we are talking not only about this collective type of work, but also bilateral discussions, contacts involving 2 or even more countries. I think this is good. It's also very useful. Now I would like to invite you to ask questions.
Thank you, Europolitics. The message of the Chinese delegation was that China is ready to cooperate more with the EU. The question is, how far can go this cooperation, and can we, for instance, imagine a kind of bilateral agreement on the same model as China did with the US recently? Thank you.
I think that we already have a very substantive bilateral relationship. I just mentioned ETS. It's a major thing. The Chinese minister also mentioned that we are cooperating on an urbanization initiative, a big initiative. I think that it's fair to say that, I mean, at all levels, we see the Chinese government all the time. Of course, you could structure it a bit more. What I discussed also over a dinner Sunday night in Brussels with Minister Xi was how to use the upcoming EU-China summit to try to target the cooperation we have in the green economy. So it's always a question of also bringing it to the top, because I would say at the experts level, at our level also with Minister Xi, there is a very, very continued dialogue, not only between the Commission and Beijing, but very much, of course, also bilaterally with 28 member states and their outreach to China. So whatever we can do in order to make that even better, that is fine, but we are putting a lot of emphasis in making it not only sort of nice declarations, but very specific cooperation. What do we do with the emissions trading scheme? How can we help them build that in China? What about the way we build cities, and so on and so forth? Very, very concrete help and building on our experience to what they are doing in China.
Klausimai. Agence Europe.
Thank you. Amina Tanyang, Agence Europe. In Copenhagen, there was a great ambition from the side of the EU, and all people had the feeling that the agreement was made without the EU. Do you have the feeling that now there is a way to find an agreement, including China, the US, and EU for the next COP19?
I think everybody has to be on board the new agreement. And actually, I think that that was already the conclusion of the Durban conference, where, if you recall it, there would not have been the outcome of Durban saying that we must have an agreement in 2015 with all nations on board and without the old sort of division of countries into developed countries who have to commit and the rest who can voluntarily contribute. That was the principles established already in Durban for the 2015 agreement. So now we must deliver that. And I think that the will is there, but I think the challenge will be basically the same as at all other COPs. It's not enough to say that you want to make such an agreement. There is a timing factor that is crucial because of the climate, and there is an ambition factor that is crucial. And I still think that Europe will have a role in trying to inject some ambition in this. That is also why we have suggested from the Commission that Europe gets ready with its 2030 discussion and targets, so that we know when we are in these negotiations on our way to 2015, what is it that Europe would be ready to deliver in the end? So it's extremely important while preparing for Paris that we are also getting our own house in order. And that is why it was very good that the heads of states back in May this year said they agreed with the Commission that the time has come now to define the 2030 targets and the ambition level. And they wanted us to come forward with specific proposals before the end of this year, so that heads of states can come back to this issue already in March next year. That is very, very useful.
And I think that participation of vice chairman is a real step in this direction, and in direction in which all we understand that only together we can reach the result which we want. Klausen?
I'm Valentinas Benishus from the Baltic News Services Agency. A question for Madam Commissioner. Yesterday there was a discussion in Vilnius about shale gas exploration. You didn't attend that, I understand, but from your portfolio, could you say what effect shale gas developments would have on climate change, and whether the targets set by European Union for stopping climate change should deter national governments from developing this industry? Thank you.
The Commission position is very clear. The energy mix is up to each individual member state. So they can do shale gas if they want. If they do not want, like France, for instance, has decided, they can decide not to do shale gas. Climate-wise, when we analyzed it, shale gas from Europe would be a bit better than what we import from outside, a bit worse than what we have in natural gas already. But sort of the effect climate-wise is minimal. Of course, there is one issue that is relevant climate-wise, and that is to take care that we do not use shale gas sort of and think that that is the recipe for everything, because then we could not achieve a low-carbon society by 2050. We should not forget that shale gas is a fossil fuel. But to have shale gas as a bridging technology from oil, for instance, to something else, that might be a relevant choice. So climate-wise, that's not where the biggest concerns are, as long as you do not think it's a recipe for everything, as long as you do not think it can replace renewables and energy efficiency. But there are some environmental concerns that have also been discussed yesterday, and that's why in the Commission we think we should have some common way of regulating that in Europe, also in order for investors to know what they can count on if they start doing shale gas exploration in Europe.
Daugiau klausimų, prašom. Čia.
Italian television, good morning. Mr. Mazuronis, about your meeting with the Italian Minister of Environment, I wonder if you have discussed about that strange situation of that story of the two Italian companies who won an important work here in Lithuania. And what you said, mostly.
I don't know, because, as I said, we will have our meeting only after this press conference. I will answer to Minister to all questions which he will ask me. And it's not the main important issues about we will discuss, I think so. But if your minister will ask me, I will try explain to him and answer to all his questions and to explain about situation as I know about it.
Dar ko galbūt nacionalinė žiniasklaida turėtų klausimų? O, prašom. Okay. Reuters. Yeah.
Hello, Andrus Sitas, Reuters News. I have a question for Madam Commissioner. When will Europe table a 2030 emissions target for the 2015 United Nations deal? Do you expect it to become to be put into law next year, or will it be put forward until 2015?
I think what matters is when will we have a political understanding with member states and the European Parliament around this. So as I said before, the intention is that the Commission will come forward with our suggestion on this before the end of this year. And after that, heads of states have already in May decided that they want to discuss it then on their March 2014 meeting. I think that in the best case scenario, then there we have an idea about what will be the ambition level for Europe, more or less how many targets do we think that we need, so we will have the overall policy framework. As you know, the European Parliament will go into elections in May next year, so you cannot sort of have a totally adopted legislative proposal finished in all institutions. That nobody ever foresaw that. But you can have a political understanding so that when the leaders of the European Union, September 14, September next year, will take part in Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's Leaders Summit in New York, then I hope that there will be a consolidated European view. What is it that we plan to do domestically this side of 2030?
Turime laiko dar vienam klausimui ministrui arba komisariai. Jeigu prašom, LRT televizija.
As far as we can understand, the dialogue with China is proceeding quite well. What is the situation in the negotiations with such big emitters as the United States and India? Can we perhaps influence them? Yes, this is a question for the Commission.
I think that we have a very substantial outreach all the time at all sorts of levels to the key players you are mentioning. After this meeting, the Minister and myself will be heading towards Krakow, where we will have Major Economies Forum from tonight and all of tomorrow. There'll be a new Major Economies Forum in September. I myself will attend early September the Pacific Islands Forum. That is the 16 Pacific Islands meetings for their heads of states, where climate will be, for very good reasons, one of the key topics. So I will go there to the Marshall Islands in the opening week of the UN General Assembly late September. We will follow up on our very good cooperation with a lot of developing countries, the cooperation that we started very sort of systematically in Durban. So there we will meet with all the more ambitious countries and decide the strategy. So just to say that at all levels, there is a very substantial outreach and a very good dialogue. Of course, very much now targeted on the Polish COP, but I believe that you have to see the Polish COP and next year's COP and the Paris COP as sort of one sequence. We start now and we have to end that process in 2015, and it must be seen in its totality. But already for the next 24 hours, we will be discussing with the 17 biggest economies of the world what to do next.
If I may, let me add something in answering to your question whether we'll succeed. We will see that in 2015 in Paris. One thing is clear, that we need to seek for an agreement, and that the member states will do everything they can to achieve this agreement is absolutely clear. There's no other way, and we'll be seeking this agreement, as the Commissioner has just said, using all means and methods that the member states can use. Thank you. Thank you to the Commissioner, thank you to the Minister, thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the press. You can find all the material related to this meeting in our internet page, EU 2013.